Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of WHF Talks, which is part of WHF at COP26. Today, I am joined by Mr. Abdulla Shahid, who is the 76th President of United Nations General Assembly. And it is a great pleasure and honor for me to host him with us today. Hello, Mr. President.
It's my great pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
I would like to start with my first question over to you, if you allow me. Climate change, as we are at COP26, poverty and inequality are the defining issues of our age, and the humanity is in cold red. And as we discussed when I had the pleasure to visit you, you define your presidency as presidency of hope. Why should we hopeful for, and what should we expect out of COP26, and what makes COP26 different than other COPs?
When I spoke at Glasgow, I put out a question on what shall we choose, whether we choose on hope or on extinction. That is the defining question that we have in front of humanity today. And COP26 deals with a choice between hope and extinction. And I've chosen hope because I truly, truly believe in the goodness of humankind to make that very, very important final step to prevent us from going off the cliff. We have the resources, we have the scientific know-how, we have the technology, we have basically everything except the commitment that has to come from us, from inside here, the courage to say, yes, we will not choose extinction, we will survive. And that is why I've chosen hope. I chose hope as the President of the General Assembly. I chose hope going to Glasgow. And I'm very hopeful that Glasgow would be, if not a complete success, progress will be made. We have heard hopeful news so far on forestry, on methane, on the 100 billion. Yes, the target has not yet been met, but a way to reach the 100 billion has been charted out. And we are making progress. We are talking about 193 countries coming together at different levels of development, different challenges, and we may not get everything. Glasgow will not solve the entire climate issue, but if we can make that little steps that are required from us, not falling off the cliff, then I think the race of hope would be alive.
Thank you so much for this strong message, Mr. President. My next question to you is about women and youth engagement for COP26. We have seen youth have taken over the streets with their activism, and we see more women now getting engaged, but there has been concerns that women and youth haven't been so much included in the negotiations. What are your thoughts on this?
You would recall that in 2012, during the UN Climate Change Conference in Qatar, I think it was the COP18, the parties to the convention reaffirmed the urgent need to ensure gender balance. I met the women scientists in Glasgow, the women scientists who are the leading female climate scientists, including the co-chairs of IPCC's latest report on the 1.5 degrees target. The fact remains that today, only 30% of climate and biodiversity researchers are women. And only 38% of national environmental delegations are women. And less than 12% of heads of environment agencies, be it ministers or departments, less than 12% are women. And this is unacceptable. Women bear the brunt end of climate disasters all over the world. And they have the knowledge. When I met the women scientists, I was so impressed by the quality of their work, the commitment of them to the cause, and also the knowledge that they had acquired. We need more women. We need a gender balance around the table in decision making to make sure that all aspects of this disaster is addressed. Same goes with youth. We need youth to be given an opportunity to sit around the table. I met the young youth NGOs who are part of the negotiating process in COP, in the CSOs. They've come up with a document, Youth Action Plan, which was contributed by over 40,000 youth around the world. It shows commitment. When I interacted with them, I was energized because they can see these issues from a different perspective. My advice to the youth delegations whom I met, my advice was that don't deviate from the commitments they have. Don't let the desire and the fire that they have inside die down. If that happens, we'll have another generation who would just go by as we are seeing today. We need this generation of youth, 1.8 billion youth, to make the change. They are going to be the change makers. They are going to inherit what we decide. So it is best that we give them a chance to be part of this decision so that they have the sense of belonging. And that is why I keep engaging with youth groups, with women organizations and individuals who are committed to the fellowship program here at the President of the General Assembly's office to involve youth in the work that I'm doing. That is why I have established a gender advisory board here in my office. And that is why I am trying to establish a global network of women leaders to give hope to women and young women and girls around the world, so that they could be part of this process of making the desired change.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, for this advocacy and action at the same time, because sometimes advocacy is not followed by action, and you are very active in the presidency at the moment, I know. So congratulations and thank you for being an active voice. Another question I have is around mobilizing resources and financing climate change. How can we mobilize resources for tackling climate change and creating resilience?
We have, I believe, we have the resources. And I believe that through our consistent effort, we will be able to reach the targets that have been set. Now, when we were going up to COP26 to Glasgow, there was concerted effort by many, many countries to make sure that the 100 billion, which was promised in Paris, would be attainable. It was not yet attainable, but because of the concerted effort and the leadership of the United Kingdom, Canada, and Germany, now we have a commitment and a pathway to reach that 100 billion by 2023. But I'm told now that this target is reachable much, much earlier than that. The $1 trillion, which would be equivalent to 100 billion over the 10 years from 2020 to 2030, is what we should have delivered. But it's not yet forthcoming. When you look at the figures, the figure would be much, much more than 1 trillion. And the fact remains that if we delay in providing this finance to the developing countries, to the landlocked countries, to the least developed countries and the small island developing countries, if we delay providing this means, then the cost of transition, adaptation, and mitigation would increase. And that is the economic principle why we should be putting up the money today. The private sector, for example, today manages more than 210 trillion US dollars in assets. And they have pledged several $1 trillion as dedicated to climate investments. When I spoke at the opening of the COP26, I welcomed the fact that these funds have been dedicated. But we have to have a proper means of accounting to see if these funds are actually being channeled to climate-related projects. So these are the matters that we should be answering. And I'm hoping that Glasgow negotiators would keep this in mind.
Hopefully. We have seen G20 in the last 2 weeks' time, and now COP26 is another big international gathering. And during COP, we have seen more than 100 world leaders coming and committing and sharing their pledges. And you were with them. You attended World Leaders Summit as well. What was your message to the world leaders, and what is your message, was and is?
When we go to COP, small islanders like us, there was a time when we had to try to convince world leaders that they should make these important decisions, that they should tackle climate change, that they should come to the table and talk about the 1.5 degrees, that they should talk about the 100 billion, that they should talk about the Paris Handbook. There was a time when we had to try and convince world leaders. But now things have changed. Everyone seems to agree that we have to address these issues. So now it is of how quickly we have to make decisions. So there is an increased awareness, an increased level of knowledge and commitment on the part of many of the world leaders in many, many countries. And we have to say, on great part, credit to the young women and men who are continuing to pressure their governments on these matters. The G20 committed its members to end coal finance by the end of the year, and to aim to contain global warming to 1.5 degrees. This was in Rome. The group acknowledged that methane emissions represent a significant contribution to climate change. Again, in Rome. They also agreed to accelerate actions to achieve net zero emissions by or around mid-century. Well, the small island nations like ours and many around the world find it unacceptable, but still this is a huge change from where it originally was. The G20 agreement reaffirmed the commitment for wealthy nations to transfer 100 billion a year in climate finance to the global south. My message is, we have the tools, we can mobilize the finance, we have the science, we have the capacity. We need political will. Show leadership. Don't fail humanity.
Thank you so much. It's again a great comment, really. We cannot ignore the importance of non-state actors as well, including private sector and civil society in this conversation. What kind of a role do you think non-state actors should play in this critical COP?
Well, the need for engagement in climate action by all levels of society, public and private, was recognized early on in UNFCCC process. COP26 will be an opportunity to take full advantage of the convening power of the COPs to foster a whole of society approach to combat climate change and its destructive impacts. I made it a point during my stay in Glasgow to go to the green zone, to meet the CSOs, to meet those who are not in the blue zone, to understand them, to give them hope that with them together, the blue and the green zone together will be able to do this job. More diverse non-state actors and subnational governments, such as cities, states, businesses, academic institutions, need to take immediate action. That is action driven by science and high ambition. When it comes to issues like climate change, action begins within the person. The action should be in first person. I should make the change first and then expect others. So that is how important this is. I'm glad that the Secretary General would set up an expert group to measure and analyze net zero commitments of non-state actors. So hopefully it is coming as more recognition of the role that non-state actors and individuals would play in addressing this issue.
This is really great news. WHF's theme at COP26 is 5 Ps: people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnerships, which is also the framework used to define SDGs. What would be your final remarks in the light of this theme?
Well, I support very much your theme of the 5 Ps: people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. It resonates with my 5 rays of hope. I have identified the 5 priorities of my presidency as 5 rays of hope, that is recovering from COVID-19, rebuilding sustainably, responding to the needs of the planet, respecting the rights of all, and revitalizing the United Nations. These are synergies in all our efforts and essential to drive forward and to deliver. So my full recognition of the synergies between your 5 Ps and the 5 rays of hope that I brought in my presidency of hope.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, for your time, for your comments, and for your call to actions. I'm sure our audience will truly enjoy this conversation. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for this opportunity.